Living in San Diego is just the worst. Well, not really, but that's what we're getting into this video. Some of the stuff that if you are moving out here, you gotta know. Some things that are, we make all these videos. Even our last video was top reasons people are still moving to San Diego. Today we're getting a little negative, one of Cassidy's favorite topics. Let you know some things that you gotta know when moving out here. We're gonna break it down into two categories. So first is just San Diego as a whole. Second is important if you are buying a home, some things you gotta know about just buying a house out here, some things that might be different from where, even if you purchase homes elsewhere, a little bit different out here. So let's dive into some of the negatives of living right here in San Diego.
So the first thing to think about that is possibly a negative, obviously people are more sensitive about this, but it is noise here in San Diego. We have quite a few airports. We have the main airport in downtown San Diego. You have Palomar Airport to the north. You have Gillespie Field. You have a bunch of airports, so there are a lot of different flight paths within San Diego. So we just heard one fly past us here in Encinitas. So that's one thing to take into consideration. But we also have bases here. So military bases like Miramar, like Camp Pendleton, like the naval base to the south. So there are some of those things you hear as well that you probably don't really think about if you don't live here in San Diego, where you do have testing, especially like we live here in North County. We hear testing from Camp Pendleton all the time, which is on the very north end of Oceanside. And we hear it all the way down into Carlsbad, San Marcos, when they're doing kind of mega testing.
And one thing with the airports, there's certain areas that are like extremely loud. I have some friends that live down in Ocean Beach, which is directly in the flight path taking off from San Diego Airport. And it's literally like you'd be hanging out, having a conversation, and then everybody else will be talking, but you can't hear what anybody's saying because it's just a constant, the planes pass pretty quick, but there's certain specific areas where you literally like have to stop your conversation or re-say what you just said because it gets loud. But the people who do live down there, friends and stuff, they get used to it. It becomes white noise. You don't necessarily know it. My folks live over on the far east area of San Marcos, but they're still in the Palomar flight path. So constantly all day you're getting planes, and that's more like smaller commuter planes. And all these areas too, as you're searching for homes and stuff, we could point those out. That's not too bad. There's also, like, we're in Encinitas and Cassidy just said we heard a plane here. So there's some random flight paths around, but it is something to be aware of, especially like Cassidy said, if you're sensitive to that.
There's also trains. So obviously the main trains, not quite.
A little bit of noise, waiting.
One other thing to think about too is train tracks split some of the most popular cities here in San Diego: Encinitas, Solana Beach, Del Mar. So train noise is definitely something to think about. During the day, it's the commuter trains. You've got Coaster, Amtrak, and then in the evenings you also have freight trains that go by as well. There is a section kind of in the north part of San Diego where you have the Sprinter, which is more like a trolley that runs east to west, west to east, both ways, through Vista, San Marcos, Oceanside. So there are some spots where you have that. And then you also have the trolley downtown in downtown San Diego where you have some of that noise as well.
And now hopping into another noise thing, not the noise you hear back there, but road noise. There's obviously freeways. There's a lot of main roads through cities. If you're on Google Maps, kind of zoom out and see what roads are popping up. Obviously the freeways are gonna pop up, maybe zoom in a little more, then you'll start seeing the main roads pop up. We'll obviously, if you're looking for homes, we'll let you know too. But since San Diego is so populated, since all the suburbs are pretty built out, there's a lot of homes that are gonna be on maybe semi-main roads and main roads, yeah. Freeways. How far does that noise go back, depending on the wind, all that kind of stuff. So it's something to think of because that's a constant noise. Freeways are gonna be constant. Some of the side roads obviously gonna be a little quieter, or the semi-main roads are gonna be a little quieter as you get towards the evenings and stuff, but you're still gonna have it. Sometimes these houses usually sit a little longer. They have a little bit more market time. They don't have as much demand because when people are there, they're opening the windows, going outside just to see how we had some clients looking and they're like, I don't know, it was kind of during rush hour and went back and it didn't work out because it was just on a main road. You'll find that a lot.
It also really depends where you're coming from. I lived in San Francisco for 4 years. Every road feels like a main road. So there's constant traffic all times of the day. So I was really used to the noise when we moved back down to San Diego. And so it really just depends where you're coming from.
Now going along with road noise, what about road condition? There's so many different roads here in San Diego, and different cities are taking care of different roads. The county has to take care, I think it was like 2,000 miles of road, very in different conditions. Like It's funny, certain areas you're going to go, especially I'm thinking of like Rancho Santa Fe, not the area, the road, Rancho Santa Fe Road, as you're going from Carlsbad into San Marcos. There's a stretch there where you're going city of Carlsbad, and then you're going county, and then you're going city of San Marcos. And you could totally tell where the county road is. I was always a wonder, why is this road not great? And it turns out it's one of the roads that the county of San Diego takes care of. So it's nice coming out of Carlsbad. They might have. I mean, it's a little tiny strip, and they have a ton of road to take care of. So there's going to be certain areas like unincorporated areas, all that kind of stuff, where you are going to find varying different road conditions. Even right now where we're standing, we're in Livin right now. There's some dirt roads right behind us, like over here, which is kind of old school. I don't know, if they're private roads or just City of Encinitas. They just kind of want that feeling in that little area. But there's a lot of different, and they're not all great.
And we do have main freeways here in San Diego. You hear us talking about the 5 a lot, the 15. Those are the north to south ones. And over the last bunch of years now, they've put in a ton of work, spent a ton of money to kind of get them in a good shape. And they're still working on the 5 especially. They're still working their way up from, say, Carlsbad up to Oceanside. And there's some big plans to fix the freeway where 5 meets the 78. So that'll help some things. But finally, in a big chunk of our freeways, it feels like they're done and they're in really good shape, and it really has helped traffic a lot too.
And they're going to find more areas to work on. I was just driving down the 52, and they're doing some more projects down there. The road is a little wavy down there, so I don't know if they're flattening it out or what, but there's some big construction. So they're going to find construction is going to continue, but the improvement of the freeways is always great. Next up, it's really not always sunny in San Diego. We make videos about how nice it is, how lovely the weather is, which it's temperate. It's not never, but it's a lot of times not too hot, not too cold. But as far as the skies, it does get overcast.
Yeah, we literally just did. You said that.
We're in one of the partly cloudy days. I need to look at my notes here. 146 sunny days, 117 partly cloudy, 102 cloudy days. It's not like Denver, I think, has 300 plus days of sun. I mean, we have 250 plus with sunny, partly sunny. But a lot of days you're gonna get like this, especially coastal. We've talked about it a bunch, May, gray, June gloom. A lot of that marine layer, you get that in other times of the year too, where it's overcast. The further inland you go, typically it clears up. What today is just like cloud cover, so that's going across the whole county. But it's not always sunny right here in San Diego.
And the positive to that also is that even if it is cloudy or partly cloudy, it's still temperate, like Chris mentioned. So like right now it's cloudy, partly cloudy, but it's 70, 72 degrees. So when you have cloud cover, it doesn't go down to 40. You've heard us talk about cost of living a bunch. Definitely check out the video we made earlier this year talking about the cost of living across San Diego County. But it is one of the main things you are thinking about when you're moving out this way. And it's especially important when you're thinking about buying a house, because that price point definitely drives what areas you're going to be looking at. One thing we do have here that you've probably heard about over the last few months, just because we've had a lot of these in Southern California, not specifically San Diego, but that is wildfires. And it is just something that we have to kind of think about, especially if you are living in an area where there's a lot of open space. It's more important to kind of think about it and be prepared. But it's great to be prepared wherever you live. And it's not something we worry about all the time. There's definitely weather situations that happen in San Diego where we kind of are a little bit more on edge or a little more alert. And that's when we have Santa Ana conditions. So that's heat coming off the desert, where usually all of the wind comes off the ocean, and that's what keeps San Diego cool. But when the heat's blowing from the opposite direction and the wind's going the opposite direction, we do get Santa Anas where it's really dry, really windy, and really hot. And that is when it tends to be a little bit more of that fire risk.
And then one other thing about San Diego is the beaches. A few things about the beaches, actually. First off, they're super busy a lot of times, definitely during summer. We're coming into a little area, a little time within the calendar. We call it local summer. Tourists aren't necessarily gone, but a lot of kids are back in school. We're in September, October. The weather's still nice. Less people at the beach, but a lot of times beaches are overcrowded because obviously it's a great spot to go. During the last heat wave we had, I got a text from my sister. We were trying to figure out what to do. Are we going to mom's pool? Are we going to the beach? She went down to the beach and was like, no, it's not gonna happen. It's just, it's too busy, parking, too many people, all that kind of stuff. I went to a birthday party not too long ago down in Carlsbad, trying to park on Coast Highway, and it was later in the afternoon. We're talking 4:30, so it wasn't super early. Figure some people would start clearing out. And I ended up having to drive back in the neighborhoods back there, park. It was about 10-minute walk to get back to where I dropped my family off, went back to them. So you're gonna find that definitely during summer times they're overcrowded a lot. There's some beaches are gonna have hard access, not easy access. Certain cities are a little bit worse as you get into the bluffs and just different infrastructure like along the coast. The water is cold a lot of the times. You can go in, like, I don't surf as much as I used to, but I'm wearing a wetsuit year round just because there are certain times, especially over these past few weeks, the water was 72 degrees, 73 degrees, but I just like to be warm. But even that, it gets, into the mid 50s in the winter time. So it does get chilly. So it's refreshing on a hot day, but if you're going in the winter, it's gonna be a little cold. So there's a few negatives about the beach. Obviously, it's beautiful. Go down there for sunsets. If you're just moving here, we ran into some clients as we were filming the other day. Well, now it was not the other day, now it was a few months back, but over at the beach exploring, just go and check it out and just having a good time. So not saying the beaches are bad, but just be prepared for crowds, cold, hard access in certain parts. When you're here, you're gonna find your beaches that are not secret, but you're gonna get your vibe. We have our beaches that we go to with the kids and stuff that are easy to get into at certain hours. Go a little bit earlier in the day before they start filling in. So beaches are awesome, but you got to know those things too. And one other thing I noticed going shopping is the limited number of cashiers. It kind of sounds funny, but I was in Sprouts the other day and one line was full. There was probably 4, 5, 6 people deep. They called up a cashier. That line filled up pretty quick. Our line grew too. Another gal came up, hey, can we get some more cashiers? They're like, we don't have any. And I've seen it a bunch of times. I don't know if it's just at Sprouts. He said 3's a crowd at Albertsons, so
Yep.
They're good there. Might just be the stores I'm shopping at, but kind of a silly thing, but it is, it's not gonna necessarily stop you from moving here.
Now we've covered San Diego, let's get into home specific. So if you are thinking about buying a home here in San Diego, some things you might need to know and might not be something where you live.
And that real quick, before, if you are thinking about buying a home in San Diego, just as a quick reminder, we are a real estate crew right here in San Diego. No, he's not Chris. I'm Chris Erickson. This is Cassidy Lewis, and we are real estate agents right here in San Diego. So if you guys are thinking about moving out here, we want you to call, text, email. We want to start that conversation, get your questions answered. Some of these things are going to be important. Some of these things are going to apply to different areas that you are looking at. So call, text, email. We got your back when making the move here to San Diego. Back to you.
The first thing that we get a lot, because this is not something that is everywhere in the country, is termites. We have subterranean and just regular termites here that you'll find either in your yard or in your house, and this is just something that's going to be pretty much at every single house. I mean, I don't think we've had a termite inspection in the last 2 or 3 years that hasn't found something. So it is just something that is normal. That's part of our inspection process when we're helping our clients, is scheduling a home inspection, scheduling a sewer line inspection, and scheduling a termite inspection. And it is just something that is very normal. It does tend to have a pretty high cost up front, but then if you kind of keep on it, it's not as bad long term. It is just something that you are going to see on every single house that you're interested in buying.
Yeah, and don't be scared when you see the termites in there. Like, houses aren't falling down.
No.
They're just, most people, what happens is these termite inspections happen when the house sells. So if they bought the house, the sellers bought the house 10, 15 years ago, they probably haven't done a termite inspection since then. There's some people who do monthly services, but for the most part, maybe they had the termite work done. Maybe they had it tented at that point. None of that happens usually until they put the house back on the market and you guys are looking at the house and then we're doing the inspections. We'll get that full report and kind of give you the breakdown. They're going to give you their recommendations, pricing, all that kind of stuff. So it's not really a big thing. It's just something to keep in mind. And if you are like unaware of termites, our guys will fill you in and what everything really actually means. But it is most likely you're going to find termites in that inspection.
And then also part of this inspection, you find a lot of dry rot, a lot of wood rot. And that sometimes ends up being more of the cost than even fixing the termite stuff.
And another bug, not necessarily, you're not getting inspections for this, but is ants. Just at the last heat wave we had an invasion of ants. Everybody I talked to, did you guys get ants?
No.
We got ants. We got a lot of
people. But we
people.
paid for somebody to keep them away.
Yeah, see, that's a good way to do it. We have been trying to steal our house for multiple years. Oh, we found their little hole, got them. We found this little thing, got them. But they came in overnight. They were like just all throughout our kitchen, and pain in the butt to get rid of because you're trying to figure out where they're coming in from. Better way is probably a prevention mode.
Yeah.
So that's one way to take care of it. But it's just a nuisance. They're not really doing anything. They're just getting in your cabinets and your food and your trash can and whatever else they could find. So it's just kind of gross because you just see a long line of ants in your house. But like I said, take care of that. Another thing about living here in San Diego is the water. Not only droughts, we have droughts from time to time, which limits landscaping, water usage. Can't wash your cars at certain times. We haven't had that in a few years, but just it doesn't really affect too much. One thing that will affect is the taste of the water. A lot of people living here don't like the taste of the water straight out of the tap. I used to drink it a lot of times. It's straight from the tap.
You started growing a third eye.
Yeah, I had to quit it, but it's the flavor's not good. It's hard water. There's a bunch of different minerals and stuff in there that can affect the plumbing and your shower head and all that kind of stuff. But there's ways to go around that. So our simple solution is Brita. Fill it up in there, put it in the fridge. You get better tasting water. Plus it's cold coming out. I remember living up in Tahoe. The water was delicious. Comes out of the tap. It's cold. That's not down here. Whatever the temperature, it's coming out at like 70 degrees. So you're like, oh, it doesn't taste good. 70 degrees, not ideal. What's your solution? What do you guys do?
We have a reverse osmosis system in ours, so it's going through filters, and it's delicious when it comes out. It's still not cold, but it is delicious.
And there's a few other things. My folks get water, sparklets water delivered to their house where they have the machine and gets cold and hot water, all that. There's also, a lot of people do the Carlsbad alkaline water, which is like a big thing here. That is another water delivery service. There's hard water or water softener systems you can install. Some homes you might look at, you'll see like this contraptions and stuff out in the garage. That's what it is. We could point that out to you, but
or whole home filters also.
Yeah, that's another thing. So there are a lot of ways that people are going about making it taste better, making it not as hard. But if you're moving out here from somewhere the water is good, don't expect that right here.
One thing, especially if you're coming from somewhere where it's a lot warmer than here, don't expect air conditioning units at every house. There are areas, like especially as you start getting a little bit more eastern, like in Escondido, Ramona, most of those houses are going to have air conditioning. But if you're in a more coastal town, Carlsbad, Encinitas, Pacific Beach, a lot of those places are not going to have air conditioning. Some of them, especially newer developments, are plumb for it. So it just means having to put in the actual condenser system. But
which isn't cheap.
It is a cost, but it is just something that we've had a lot of clients that are like surprised that there's not air conditioning as just kind of a norm, and it really isn't. My parents have lived here in San Diego for over 50 years, and they've never had air conditioning until their most recent house that they just built, which is a year and a half ago, and they've lived in Encinitas all of that time and have lived without air conditioning. So it really is just personal preference too. And here in these coastal towns like Encinitas, Carlsbad, 95% of the time you don't need it. But there are a couple weekends, like this past heat wave we had, where you definitely want it.
Yeah, and my parents live over in San Marcos where they should have air conditioning. They don't. But a few ways they mitigate it, they built a pool in their backyard. So you get hot, you go take a dip. They also put something called a whole house fan in. And basically what it does is it takes in cool air. You open some windows as it cools off in the evening, turn this thing on, it brings in the cool air and then throws the hot air out through the attic. So from what they've said, from my neighbors have some of theirs in their houses, they say they work great. It's not, obviously you need it to be a little cooler outside for it to be useful, but there's another way that we have done it. We don't have air conditioning at my house. We have like a little portable unit. You just hook up, it gets like one room at a time, but it was not a lifesaver, but it was very useful in the last heat wave we did have. Now going with wildfires, and in that vein, one thing that we have seen a lot lately is insurance costs rising or potentially just being much harder to get. So the first thing when clients are purchasing a home and we're going in the process and get your money into escrow, your deposit, usually back in the, and a few years ago when there was plenty of insurance options, it was not as much of a priority. But now we're telling clients right away, start reaching out to your brokers, or we have insurance brokers here who can find insurance providers that are going to provide insurance for that property. because sometimes it takes a little longer or it's a little more expensive, so you want to find the right one for you. But it has been a thing as State Farm has stopped issuing new policies. What else? Farmers, no, Farmers is still here.
No.
Farmers is gone. A bunch of other smaller ones have left California, so the pool has gotten smaller, so the costs have gone up. We sold a property last year, and there was a few things. It was in a high fire zone, which you'll find out we'll talk about disclosures here in a second, but it also had an insurance claim. So the insurance cost was much higher than anything we have seen. Most of the times you're just dealing with the insurance cost for the wildfire zone, and certain zones, like I said, are gonna cost a little bit more because they're in higher fire areas.
Another thing, if you have not bought a home here in California, you are gonna be shocked, maybe appalled, by the amount of paperwork and disclosures that are part of real estate transactions. It is a ton. We have a great teammate that helps us take care of all of the paperwork side. It is a lot. All of it's digital, so it's made easy, but there's just a ton of paperwork to go through. When we are talking with our clients about disclosures, you want to read all of it, but there are a few that are really important to take a look at, read thoroughly, and that's all the seller prepared disclosures. So we have a transfer disclosure statement, we have a seller property questionnaire, and those are really the two really ones to kind of focus in on. Some of these disclosures are also going to show you what the fire zone is. So there's a new inspection called the fire hardening inspection that may be required during the transaction if it is in one of those higher fire zones.
And with all those disclosures, if you are in HOA, that is another thing. You're going to get a ton of paperwork. You're going to get all their past documents, all their past, like their financials, all their past meetings, the agendas, all what's happening, the CCNRs, what you could do, what you can't do. A lot of stuff to read through. But we put HOA as a negative because there's obviously a lot of HOAs throughout San Diego, even in some areas you wouldn't think. So just limiting what you can do. Now HOAs aren't all bad because they keep the cohesiveness of the neighborhood, where you can't do certain things, you can't build certain ways, you can't do certain remodels, all that kind of stuff. But there's also varying prices where you have some HOAs that are like $250, $300. Then you have some, especially like if you go downtown into those condos and stuff, you get high $600, $700, $800. You're paying for that because obviously they're taking care of the building, but you're taking care of amenities. One benefit of having an HOA, let's just say you're at a townhome complex, you're paying the HOA. A lot of times you are going to have amenities with that. So a pool, maybe a little gym, maybe a little playground, play structure, play area for the kids, whatever that might be. But also they're taking care of the property, where they're taking care of a lot of the outside of the property. You're going to have landscapers come in. There's just a lot that's included in that. Sometimes roofs are included. So, if they need to replace the roof down the line. But if the HOA was run poorly or there's unexpected expenses coming up, sometimes you're going to have an assessment, which is an additional cost. It's like a lump sum that, let's say, they needed to do the roofs and the fences and the termite work and all this stuff came up at the same time. They didn't have the reserves for it. They could potentially do an assessment for that property, and all the homeowners would have to pay whatever it might be, $5,000, $8,000, whatever. It varies. Those numbers are just thrown out there, but you will see that as well. So HOAs are a benefit, but they could also have some negatives as well.
Next up, San Diego as a whole is pretty much built out. There is not a whole ton of new construction going on, but there are here and there are some opportunities for new construction. But one of the things that we see as an issue in San Diego as a whole is building restrictions. So a lot of cities will have their own individual building departments. The county has their own. San Diego City has their own. And you do tend to just have issues with different building departments, restrictions. There's cities that are way more restrictive. We're sitting in one right now in Encinitas that's more restrictive when it comes to building. And we also have the Coastal Commission, which is a third-party kind of additional approval group for the coastal zones. And there's different parts of the coast that are a little bit more restrictive. Within a certain distance of the coast, there are just some extra rules, extra time, all of that.
And the next negative has been the case for the last few years, and it's really going to affect you if you're searching for a home, is the low inventory, the low number of homes for sale. As you're looking for homes, especially if you are pretty specific in your search and you want a specific area, you want a specific neighborhood, obviously the more narrow you get, the less choices you're gonna have. But over these past few years, there just hasn't been a ton of inventory. Now we have seen some coming on this year. Our typical season when we see the most coming on is that spring season. So going into April, May, topping out in June or so. But just the number of choices, like during a few, like 2022 and certain parts of 2023, we had clients hooked up on searches and, you know, they'd be like, all right, we're ready to move out. They'd come out and we're like, there's like 3 houses to see. So it was very limited. Now we're seeing a little bit more.
One a weekend after that.
Yeah, and it was like, as you're going out, you're like, let's set up weekend showings. Let's do ABC. Let's do, you know, 4 or 5 a day, kind of max it out at that, maybe 6. We were seeing 1 a weekend. The next weekend, 1. You know, it was just very limited. Like, it's not as bad right now, but it is still restricted. So we just haven't seen a ton of inventory. Now, as interest rates fall at a certain point, we expect more to come on. We don't know what that number is, but it should bring some of the sellers off the sidelines. But at that point too, rates are gonna fall, and usually we're gonna see more buyers as well. So it's gonna take, you know, I think there's right now probably gonna be more buyers than sellers, which is gonna restrict inventory a little bit more. But that's been the case for the past few years here in San Diego, and we've had a lot of success finding clients' homes, even in this restrictive environment that we have had. So if you're thinking about moving out here and you guys have some questions, not even questions, let's start that conversation. We want to hear from you, and we love making these videos, but more than that, we love helping you guys find a house right here in San Diego. So if you are thinking about moving out here, we want you to reach out, call, text, email. We will hop on that Zoom call, get you dialed in, get all your questions answered, and set up a plan to make your San Diego move as good as it could be. So if you're thinking about moving out here, hit us up because we got your back when making the move here to San Diego.